Good day and welcome to another session of Manifest panel discussions in the healthcare marketing space. Today we have with us Sandeep Verma. Sandeep Verma is the country head of Bio-Consumer Healthcare, is a true blue marketing professional, has worked at Hindustan Unilever, Bajaj Consumer Care, and now very focused in the consumer healthcare space. So love his thoughts on that. And Sandeep, you're going to get right into it. With this varied experience, how has consumer healthcare marketing been different for you?
So I think more than the differences, it's the similarities. So like when I was in Unilever, there also I started my career on beauty brands. So I was handling beauty brands, and then I went into healthcare brands, health and hygiene brands, like big brands like Lifebuoy, for example, or Domestos, etc. So there also there's a big difference between how the health and hygiene brands behave versus how the beauty brands behave. Eventually, at the end of the day, it is the same consumer, right? It is the same consumer who's looking for beauty brands as per his or her need, looking for health and hygiene brands as and when they are required, and also looking for the consumer health brands as and when they're required. I think in both, the biggest similarity is that you need to do a deep dive on your target audience, irrespective of which category you are trying to sell. In both, it is extremely important for you to form a very strong connect with the consumer, either ways. And in both, you need to have a very strong element of innovation. Okay, now there are differences between each of these three parameters for FMCG and for consumer health. But these three are the biggest similarities. So I think when you have such level of similarities, it is not immensely difficult to make the switch from FMCG to consumer health. And in a way, they are sort of joined at the hip. So they are very, very similar. Of course, they're also very different in the sense that the FMCG market is a much more well-developed market as such. It has categories with penetration levels close to 99%, 99.5%, or 100%. So there, in most of the categories, okay, the game is how do you win a larger share of the pie, a larger size of the pie, and hence differentiation versus the other brand becomes extremely critical. The other big difference between consumer health and FMCG is the role of sensorials. Sensorials play a much larger role when you're buying your shampoo versus when you're buying your protein supplement as such, right? So because this category or this set of products, consumer health set of products, are extremely functional in nature. So aesthetics are important to a certain level, but not critical. In FMCG, you can differentiate on the basis of aesthetics and and your sensorials itself. So like I said, so one is already a very highly penetrated market. And then you have consumer health, where the highest penetration level in any category is not more than 15%. And 15% in urban India. I'm not even talking about rural. So this is a vastly under-penetrated market as compared to FMCG, which is a vastly penetrated market, barring a few categories here and there. So many differences, but I think the foundation of both these set of products is the same, which is in those three things that I spoke about.
Sweet. No, and I really like this perspective because building categories is one of the toughest things to do. And in consumer healthcare, you're often changing habits while you're building the category. So how do you tackle that?
Yeah, you are 100% right. So I'll tell you a very simple template that we've crafted for all of the four categories. So we at Bayer Consumer Health are present in 4 categories in India. So for each of these 4 categories, we follow this template that we call the ask, know, and act template. So it sounds more difficult and more complicated than it is. Ask, know, act simply means that you start by asking the right questions. Okay, so for example, if you are feeling fatigued in the middle of the day at 2 p.m., if you're starting to feel fatigued at home, if you're working at home or if you're working in the office, you have to start asking, why am I feeling fatigued suddenly? I used to do all these things very easily earlier. Now I'm suddenly starting to feel fatigued. So ask that question. The know part of it is now you need to know the right answer. Get knowledge on the question that you've asked. And there again, it's a big challenge. While it seems that in this day and scenario, in this day and age, it's very easy to get knowledge about everything, which I completely disagree with. Okay, it is very easy to get data about anything and everything, but whether it's the right information, okay, and how do you decide whether it's the right information? If Google is the only source of knowledge and the only source of knowledge that you have, then every small ailment that you search for on Google will eventually lead you to cancer of some form or the other. Okay, it will eventually drive you down to the worst possible scenario, and that actually causes you even more stress than is required. So getting knowledge from the right sources is very, very critical, and identifying who those sources are is very, very critical. And the third part is then take act. Once you have the right knowledge, then you need to act, and sometimes that itself is the biggest is actually the most difficult thing, to convince people to act. So for example, even you have a headache, okay, and you have figured out, so you asked a question, you figured out that your headache is because of stress, probably, okay, you're taking too much stress and that's why you have a headache, okay, and there is a remedy over there, right there, but you're still not acting because you're like, okay, it's okay, I can work through headaches. All of us are guilty of doing that, right? 90% of Indians have headaches, and headache incidences are rising in this country and in the world because of various factors. So you know that you have regular headaches, or you have even intermittent headaches. You know that the reason for that is stress, that you're taking too much stress, and yet you're not going to act on it. So sometimes convincing people to act itself is very difficult, is sometimes the most toughest job, and that's why you have to work at all these three aspects. And the first one is always the awareness generation, the ask part of it, where you're telling the people that, connect your fatigue to something other than age. Most of the people that you talk to, or maybe you yourself also, if you're talking about the fact that these days I can't complete some. I used to do runs. I used to do runs of 4 kilometers, every day. Now I'm not able to go beyond 2 kilometers. It's probably because I'm getting old. So you've already decided, or you've already resigned to the fact that I can't do anything about it. Instead of actually asking the right question, that am I doing the same thing? Is there something that I'm missing out on? If you ask the right question, it may get you the right knowledge and then get you to act. So getting people to ask the right questions is often, it's the first step, of course, and it's also often the most difficult one. So each of these three are equally important. Getting people to ask the right question, giving them the right awareness, or giving them the right knowledge, and then getting them to act. Equally important. So I think that's a template that we follow.
No, and I love this because typically we have the IDA model that we've all been learning in Kotler, and in most of consumer marketing, that's what we do: aware, interest, desire, and act. And flipping that slightly as a marketing funnel is for consumer healthcare is seeming like a very interesting way to do it. It also kind of puts a lot of onus on the consumer themselves.
Exactly.
Which therefore gets me to my next two questions, but I'll ask the first one. So talking about funnels, I found that consumer health is one of the highest involvement categories, even at low and average consumer price points. And that's often a very deep challenge. And how does one address that?
All consumer health categories typically have a longer funnel as compared to some of the other categories or some of the other products, and that's largely because so consumer health is very, very personalized. Okay, so it is called self-care. The other word for consumer health is self-care, right? Responsible self-care. Anything that you are doing for yourself, okay, you will always research the most for that one. Even if you're buying, let's say, a set of earphones just for yourself, okay, you will do the maximum research for that, okay, because only you know what exactly are you looking for, okay, because am I looking for the best audio quality, or am I looking for surround sound, am I looking for noise cancellation? You will do the maximum research for that. And often people are also, not everyone, but most people don't want to spend too much on themselves, right? That's the other thing. So because the self-care, the whole category is about you and yourself. there the whole factor of trust and credibility that brands need to build with the consumer takes a much longer amount of time, much longer period of time. This is not a low involvement product category like an FMCG, like most of the FMCG product would be. This is a medium to high involvement category, and hence the process is much longer to convince people, make them aware, convince them, get them to buy. And also the other big difference, or the other important point in the consumer health products and categories is that once the consumer has made a choice, it is very difficult to shift her also from that choice to something else. So whichever part of the funnel you look at, it's a much longer part, much more elongated, whether top, bottom, middle, whatever it is, and it does take time. So you need to have a lot of patience in this category. You need to become a lot more personalized in this category. As mass advertising, for example, is good to a certain extent, even here, but more often than not, the switch happens when you talk to her at a individual level, her or him at an individual level, at a more personalized level. So that's why it's a little more elongated, I would say, in terms of timing and everything else.
Absolutely. The two big things I hear you say is, therefore, because of higher involvement, longer marketing funnels, it takes longer to build a brand, but there are also bigger brand loyalties and therefore deeper brand loyalties, and therefore your brand sticks on for longer even after you've finished marketing it or not been marketing it for some time in a few cases. And therefore, a few interesting things that we should probably talk about is these high involvement marketing funnels also require a deeper insights when you're building marketing campaigns and communication campaigns is something I've struggled with. And second thing is what you spoke about in terms of personalization. So if we could touch upon each of these one by one, and your experience, any examples you have would be great for the audience to know more about.
Sure. So let me touch the first part, which is the whole deeper insight part, and you literally hit the nail on the head. and then I'll give you an example of headache. So you need much deeper insights in this particular category, like I was explaining. Because the behavior is or the not acting behavior is so well entrenched in your psyche that you sometimes literally have to shake the person up to come out. So most of the consumer health categories, most of the consumer health brands are based on a very strong need which they address, or a very strong problem which they are addressing. So either you're a problem solution brand or you are into the wellness thing, in which case you're solving the need for health and wellness. So let me give you the example of headache of our brand Saradon. So Saradon is a brand which has been serving this country for almost 60 years, 6 decades of service for this particular country, for this particular brand, for all Indians. We were trying to understand why the penetration of Saradon is still so small. Incidence of headache is so common. Okay, I don't think you can ask anyone in this room or anywhere outside that have you ever had a headache, and the answer will be no. It is about as common as anything at all. And yet the penetration of using any form of medication or any form of remedy for a headache is less than 10% in India. So 100%, almost 100% of Indians have a headache. Only 1 in 10 person will do anything about it. So we were trying to understand what is the reason for this. I mean, if you have a pain, if you have a headache, then why is it that you're not taking any medication? And some very interesting insights came to us. So, for example, one of the big insights which came in was that from a childhood, okay, when we grow up, okay, as a child, when your kid falls down, you tell him, "Kuch nahi hua, out jao." So we've always been taught to endure pain. Okay, we've always been taught that those who can bear pain, okay, are the heroes. Okay, they are the people who you need to base yourself on, because those are the ones who are the heroes. And for a certain extent, yes, to a certain extent, probably true as well. So in our culture and in our psyche, soldiering through pain, working through pain, bearing pain is seen as a badge of honor. Okay, as if you're working, if you come to your office with a throbbing headache, okay, and you have a very important presentation to make, and you do the presentation, after that you will tell 10 other people, I've made this presentation through a throbbing headache, and I cracked the deal, or I did very well at the presentation. But you will definitely add the pain part of it, right? Yeah. Because you wear it as a badge of honor, right? You don't want to do anything about it because you think that taking medicine, okay, is losing to the pain. So that is the insight that we are working on, where we said that winning over pain is the sign of a true hero, not losing to pain and working through pain. So that became the insight of our first campaign that we did on Saturday 3 years back, where we spoke about exactly that. So that's the kind of insight where that's the level of depth that you need to get into on consumer health in terms of cracking insights. To your point, what was the second question?
The second question was on what you'd mentioned in terms of personalization. Yes. Of the content that goes through the marketing funnel journey.
Yes. So in this example itself, so one of the biggest reasons for pain, for headache, is stress. Okay. So we did before we started this campaign, we did a survey to understand the cause of headache in this country, cause of headache in India. Okay, so obviously then stress came up as the biggest reason for the headache and all, and then we also did a deep dive to understand the reason for the stress, for the reason for stress in India. We did it right after COVID, okay, and then we did another 2 years after COVID to understand the difference between the stress levels. If the stress levels had gone down, because COVID, had different kind of stress levels, your life itself was at stake, and unfortunately we figured that the stress levels have not gone down, just the reasons for that stress have gone down. So we identified different sets of consumers. Different sets of consumers had different reasons for the stress. So for example, if you're addressing a homemaker, okay, if you're addressing a homemaker or a housewife, and her reason for stress might be different. She may have guests coming over, for example, and the gas has run out, or electricity is not there. So reasons of stress would be different. Versus a gig worker who has a completely different, versus a truck driver whose reason for stress. Now, if you go with the same creative, okay, or with the same solution to each one of them, while the insight remains the same for all of them, that they all are trying to soldier through pain and trying to work, but you have to address it differently. Exactly. So we actually we then created cohorts basis this, and we then addressed each cohort differently. So creative for each cohort was actually different, using the exact same insight. So that's the level of personalization that you need to do in this category.
I'm guessing you use digital media and media planning to target the cohorts very sharply. Wow, interesting stuff. So, just taking a step back now, once again, you spoke about self-care, and I know you've been a big proponent of self-care. So what is Bayer doing to shift the conversation from, consumer healthcare marketing to self-care?
So I think quite a few things. Our biggest category, for example, is nutrition. One of the biggest challenges this country has is in the area of nutrition. And if you look at various campaigns that the government has started in the last 10 odd years, prior to that also they were, but in the last 10 years they have accelerated the efforts at improving the nutrition levels of this country. So you have the Poshan Abhiyan, you have various other Abhiyans which are catering to specific target audiences and all. So I think that's the first, that's the biggest, let's say, change that we are trying to bring into this country, or contributing a little bit to the nutrition of this country. Before we even started, so our biggest nutrition brand is Supradin, as you know. Before we started any advertising on Supradin, okay, we wanted to understand the role of supplements, okay, a role of vitamins, mineral supplements in the overall nutrition. So when you talk to anyone, when you go out and you talk to anyone, are you getting adequate nutrition from your food? Everyone will say, yes, I'm eating a balanced diet, or that my region's diet is the best. I eat home cooked food, etc., etc. I don't eat processed food that much. So everyone seems to believe that they are eating the best food, and whatever they are eating is sufficient for their nutrition, etc., etc. So we then decided to do a survey amongst HCPs, among doctors, just to understand that if an Indian in India, if you eat a completely balanced diet, is it sufficient for you to get all your micronutrients? We actually did a survey among 2,000 doctors in this country. And the survey was quite startling because the doctors said that, almost 95% of doctors said that even if you eat a completely balanced diet, you will only get 70% of your micronutrients. You will not get 100%. 70% is the maximum that you can get. Wow. For the balance 30%, you have to take supplements. So that was the first survey. That was the first thing that we did, just to understand how we can make a difference. How we as nutrition, we as producers of vitamins, minerals, and supplements can help in this cause of nutrition, in the cause of self-care. So our first campaign was all around raising awareness of nutrition, of how important food is. So food obviously has to be your foundation. You have to eat a balanced diet for sure. But even after that, you have to take the adequate or the requisite supplements for you to get to 100% nutrition. So we are currently running a campaign called One Nation 100% Nutrition in India, where we are raising the awareness of how important nutrition is, how important adequate amount of nutrition is. Most of the awareness in this country around nutrition, even amongst people who are quite well aware, is around macronutrients. So you will be taking the right amount of proteins. Okay, you may be taking the right amount of carbs. You may be taking the right amount of even fats in your body. But if you don't have the right amount of micronutrients, it's like one of the doctors was giving me this analogy that it's like having the best car without an ignition key. He said micronutrients is like that ignition key. If you don't have micronutrients, your machine is not going to move, basically. So that's what we are doing. We are raising awareness. Our campaigns that we are running on Supradyn, which is our core brand, talk about this awareness. And that's what actually across the 4 categories that we have present, in. On Saladon also, we are talking about making people aware and asking them to act on their pain. Okay, in Supradyn, we are making people aware that you eat a balanced diet, good, but you need to take supplements to get to 100% nutrition. So these are 2 of the biggest campaigns we are running, and that's how we believe we can contribute to the overall self-care journey of this country.
Interesting. In each of these campaigns, I see you flip the conversation from the brand to the consumer, and that's obviously a big part of the self-care. And typically the consumer either asking or informing the consumer or getting the consumer to act in the way that you spoke about.
Yes.
So interesting stuff. And Supradyn, very interesting you spoke about it, because it's one of the brands in the country that has really been successful in the wellness and the nutrition space. And folks outside consumer healthcare don't know this, but India's been a particularly tough nut to crack on wellness and nutrition. So if you could tell us a little bit more about that journey, that success.
So I'll talk about a little bit of the success on Supradyn, and I'll also talk about one of the failures we had on Supradyn, because often you learn more from the failures than you do from the success. So it hasn't been a completely rosy journey in this category for us. So for example, when we started the journey in 2021, 3.5 years ago, so the brand has been in existence for a very long time, okay, but it was a brand which wasn't advertised very well, and there was some knowledge of the HCPs. The HCPs did have some knowledge of it, but not that much. And an even bigger challenge on Supradyn was that it hadn't kept up with the time. So its formulation had remained the same since the time of its inception itself. So the first thing we did was basically to completely revamp its product itself. So we started with a big innovation where we revamped the formulation, and we were doing this during COVID, with all the COVID challenges being there, virtual, etc. So we revamped the product first. We brought in all the things that we spoke to the doctors about, and the doctors said that you need this, you need to add this, you need to add this. So the first change was in the product itself. In consumer health, that's the other big difference between FMCG and consumer health. Your innovations are a lot more backed by science. Okay, sometimes you may have some sensorials also, but they are always largely backed by a very strong reason to change, science-based reason to change. So we started by doing that. The other thing, which is a very important thing for India, that we were very clear on right from the beginning. So Supradin, as you know, but for everybody else who's watching, is a mass-priced multivitamin. When we changed the formulation, we were very clear that it will still remain a mass-price variant. So I'm very proud to say that till today, Supradin is the cheapest multivitamin in this country. Okay, it's the cheapest by our next competitor is 2x pricing of us. So that's the gap between us. And we were very clear that in this country, if you are creating the category of multivitamins, of nutrition, then the product has to be accessible, has to be made accessible, which means distribution has to be good and affordability also has to be good. So that was one of the biggest levers that we managed and maintained on Supradin. And the other thing, like I spoke about from day one, we've been clear. This is a category development job. This is not a share gain job. So we've been true to that essence, that we are building nutrition category. We're basically trying to create the pie. Right now, the pie is there, but it's relatively small, very small. So we are creating this pie. We're trying to increase the size of the pie, keeping it very accessible, keeping it very affordable for the consumers. And now we are adding more innovations onto it. So we are, over a period of time, we've realized that we probably need single vitamin based, focused VMS stuff as well. So we've launched that. Now, one failure that I wanted to talk to you about was under Supradin, just around COVID, towards the end of COVID, maybe end of 21, we launched another supplement which was focused on immunity. So it was that whole, it was called Supradin Immuno. And we said that we'll keep it pure D2C. We will drive it just through communication, because those were COVID times and immunity, was one of the most searched for term at that point in time. So we launched that variant towards the end of 21, beginning 22. And what we hadn't bargained for was that as COVID went away, suddenly all the awareness or all the action that people were taking on immunity completely went away entirely. So that variant did not work at all for us, because we were pushing the immunity angle on it, completely immunity angle on it. We really burnt our hands on it. And then what we realized was that because the new variant was so good, and it was very well differentiated with core brand, the mother brand. So this was a product which was based on natural extract. So it had haldi, turmeric, it had all those things it had. And it had 4 natural extracts, it had a lot of antioxidants, etc. So we decided that instead of completely calling it off, okay, let's change our approach to the consumer. So we decided to go to the HCPs with it. And the HCPs really like the product. So right now, the variant still exists. It collapsed in the year of its launch, and then it has picked up again because we changed our mode of communication to the consumer. We went to the HCPs. So now we don't do D2C marketing on it. We take it to the doctors, and the doctors are now prescribing Supradin. So that's a learning from one of the failures that I had on Supradin.
No, to be honest, I think the entire industry was surprised. Everyone was launching, immunity supplements and immunity products, and even
supplements. We had curtains which had immunity. We had air conditioners which were
bread, which was immuno bread.
Yeah.
So yes, I have that too, yeah. So, and we were all surprised by how quickly that died down. I think maybe because a lot of folks got carried away.
Yeah.
But coming back to Supradin, and you mentioned the healthcare professionals or the HCPs, and that's something I found that influencers, different stakeholders, different influencers, because of the marketing funnel that we spoke about in consumer healthcare and self-care, the influencers play a big role, especially healthcare professionals. So if you could talk a little bit more about that, what's the role they play? How have you discovered that? How have you used that to good success?
Sure. I think one of the big angles you need to use in consumer health marketing or in self-care marketing is education to the consumers. You don't need so much education to the consumers in the FMCG products, I say, barring a few categories here and there. So but in consumer health, you need a lot of education because like I said, these are under-penetrated or unpenetrated categories itself. And hence you need a good source of that education. It can't be the brand, because a brand only develops trust and credibility over a period of time. Otherwise, it becomes brand speak. This brand is saying it because they're trying to sell their product, etc., etc. And that's where influencers come in. Now the way I look at it, influencers can be a double-edged sword. Okay, and like I was saying earlier, on any social media platform that you go on right now, you will find thousands of healthcare influencers. Okay, 99% of them are wrong. 99% of them. 1% of the influencers are right. So the task often becomes identifying the right influencers. I'm not saying that all influencers are wrong. I'm just saying, but there are so many who pass themselves off as healthcare influencers, and they're either selling all kinds of things or they're propagating all kinds of myths, about something that they have picked up on WhatsApp. So often you'll find stuff which is being quoted from WhatsApp making its way onto social media in the form of an influencer, etc. So we've been very careful to identify ourselves only with the influencers that have genuine knowledge of the subject. So for example, we very recently launched an innovation under Saradon. It's called Saradon Woman. It's a period pain medication, which is supposed to be a very common thing amongst women in this country and also in the world. So apparently almost 90% of the women face period pain. So we've launched this product which takes care of all period pains, include and bloating, etc. Everything, headache, body pain, bloating, everything. So it helps you with all of that stuff. Now, to launch a product like this in a category which is still a huge taboo to talk about in India. Nobody talks about period pain other than forget period pain. Nobody talks about periods itself in India other than maybe some of the sanitary health napkins, etc. So when we were very conscious from day one that look, on this one, you will need strong influencers who should most likely be gynecologists, doctors, basically, right? So the kind of influencers we use, they're all practicing gynecologists who have a good social media following and all. So we haven't gone for influencers who have millions of followers. We have gone for influencers who can help us create knowledge about this subject. And you are yourself an expert in the entire healthcare field. You know how many questions, how many myths are there on the whole area of period pain. And firstly, Indians don't use anything but pain itself. Now imagine about period pain. So it's like a double whammy. So we've actually used these influencers, put out posts on period pain, but we've done many Q&A sessions, live Q&A sessions. And we were very surprised to see the kind of response. And the gynecologist herself was so surprised to see the kind of questions which were coming, which were so basic. She was astonished, really astonished. And it was good that she was there because people had trust and credibility, and she's a practicing gynecologist, etc. So we've used influencers in this manner, largely in this manner, to build engagement and also to raise awareness about the problems that we are trying to solve. And I think most healthcare brands, all healthcare brands, they should choose their influencers very, very carefully. And I have the same request for all the consumers also. The healthcare influencer that you follow need not have millions of followers, but he needs to have some credibility in terms of either his educational qualification or in terms of what he's talking about. And there are many credible healthcare influencers also. So we've used influencer in this form largely.
I love what you said, because I've actually found that in this case, it's probably inversely proportional. The number of followers of healthcare influencers is inversely proportional to the sense that they make from a pure healthcare and a science perspective. Because it's very easy in healthcare for an influencer to pick up controversial topics, to kind of question the current norm without giving a solution. And they get the followers, but they're often talking stuff which is actually wrong? And it's
100%. And often it is like with all other forms of social media, clickbait comes into picture here also, right? So anything that sounds sensational, okay, a lot of them will go with just that. Like a lot of myths, right, wrong on ghee, for example. Okay, a lot of myths, right? I don't want to get into it, but yeah, a lot of things. What is the source of your knowledge? What are you talking about? What is the source of this knowledge? Nobody will ever talk about the source. They will just start the thing with, did you know that? Arey bhaiya, what is your source? What is your source? And people, because a lot of things people want to believe. Like tomorrow, if somebody starts saying that, the fact that processed food is bad is a complete myth. A lot of people who are having it would want to hear that. So sometimes you want to believe the guy because it is just validating what you're doing, and it may be validating all the wrong things that you are doing. So a lot of these influencers are also surviving because of that reason, because they are validating some of the wrong things which you are doing, and it's good to hear. On the ear, but bad for the body eventually.
Absolutely. So thanks. I think we've had like a super conversation. We've really picked your brains and we've kind of gone to depth on a lot of marketing conversations that we haven't. So I'm going to leave the audience with one easy question for you, which is the debate on the 70-hour and the 90-hour and the 40-hour work weeks. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're barking on the wrong side of the tree, honestly speaking, with this whole 70-90 debate. And again, I'm saying this on the back of some work that we've done in India. So nothing related to 70-90 hours, but like I was talking about earlier, fatigue is a subject that is very deeply related to nutrition. So we had done something like something that we call a fatigue survey in this country amongst 10,000 working professionals in this country. And this was done much before this controversy broke, so we didn't do it because we had done it much before, right? So we did this. We had done the survey to understand, the working professional, what are the level of fatigue they face, what is their understanding of fatigue, or why it comes in and all. And that survey has such startling results. For example, 85% plus of the working population in this country who were surveyed said that we even wake up feeling tired sometimes. And this is not because they've had a long night. It's like regularly we wake up feeling tired sometimes. 80% of the people felt that half day through I start feeling tired. And the most interesting part was that we did the survey 25 to 35 and 35 to 45-year-old age group. 25 to 35 age group was actually worse in terms of fatigue, in terms of everything else that they're going. And that's why I think that whether you're working a 70-hour week or you're working a 90-hour week, if you're working at 50% of your productivity, what use are you for the company? What we should be talking about is the productivity of a workforce. If you're working at 100% of your productivity for 40 hours, isn't that much better at working 50% of your productivity at 70 hours? That is the debate we should be having in this country. We need a productive workforce. We don't need a workaholic workforce. I think there was another study which was conducted by somebody else, which mentions that India is the most workaholic nation in the world. We are already amongst the hardest working population in this world. But are we the most productive set of people in the world? Not by a long stretch of imagination also. So the discussion should not be about the number of workers. The discussion should be around the productivity and the quality of workers. And if you're looking for productivity, higher productivity, quality of workers, then you need to have a proper work-life balance. Okay, there is no getting away from it. You can put in a few late nights, long nights, etc. But not all the time. Remember, everything has a price to pay. Everything has a price to pay. Someday or the other, it will take a toll on your body. So keeping a work-life balance, working the right number of hours, and ensuring that you are as productive when you are leaving the office as you are when you're entering the office. That should be the most critical part. And I think we need to link fatigue or whatever it is that the workforce is facing with nutrition, whether they're eating the right kind of food or not. That is the discussion that we should be having in this country.
Thanks, Sandeep. I think this was a great conversation. I think some deeply provocative, deeply insightful questions, both on healthcare marketing and personal health, that you have forced us to ask ourselves. So thanks so much for that.